I am a sex worker. I'm a former drug user, formerly unhoused. They tried to take my kid away for being a sex worker. I mean, sex work gave us a roof over our head. Los Angeles County harm reduction syringe programs are responsible for saving 10,000 lives from overdose just last year.
Wow.
We have a particular kind of program that is highly low barrier, run by peers.
Because of the work you do, your heart is probably in some state of broken all the time.
All the time. As providers, it can be very challenging to suit up every day and keep going when you know that a large portion of your work will be witnessing the failures of the system and witnessing the people that you care about die of preventable diseases.
You had a friend who passed away.
A woman who has a mind of a 12-year-old making her money to survive by doing $5 sex work. And then a man tricked the supervisors at that facility. He pulled her out of her program, and then he dumped her in the streets of Skid Row. He didn't take her back to the boarding care. The whole system was part of killing her. The whole system has blood on their hands.
I have massive respect for Soma Snakeoil and the Sidewalk Project. I consider her a friend, and I love the work she and her team are doing in Los Angeles, on Skid Row, in MacArthur Park, and across the city. It's nothing short of life-saving. We actually produced a documentary on the Sidewalk Project, which I'll link in the description below, along with an article we published exposing a deadly pattern of patient dumping at Los Angeles General Hospital. Both pieces connect directly to what we talk about in this podcast. In this conversation, Soma and I go deep into the brutal realities of patient dumping, harm reduction, sex work, and what it really takes to show up for people that the system has abandoned. So good to see you.
So good to see you too.
Far too long.
We haven't hung out in a while.
Yeah, you're going to have to explain what art criminal. You're going to have to explain the hat.
I mean, it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek. It's kind of being clever, but I guess I didn't prepare to talk about my hat when I came on here, but I would say I've been doing kind of dissident art for a good portion of my adult life.
Part of the Soma Snakeoil story.
That's right.
That doesn't get told a lot.
Right, including, within the sex work space and performing, fetish performing, and, making films and things like that don't necessarily always jive with mainstream culture. And I may have been known to slap a few things on some walls here or there.
Yeah.
But I think it's sort of like challenging the status quo, really, through arts, which is a big part of the work that we do with Sidewalk Project.
We need more art. We need more music at this, we need a revolution. So we need the art and music to go along with it. Like, what's the playlist that's happening right now?
Absolutely. And music fuels revolutions, doesn't it? And
yeah.
I mean, we think about, I was thinking, as we're diving deeper into the unmasking of fascist America, how interesting to see what our arts and our music is going to look like. Because you think about other art movements in history that were really fueled by oppression, whether it's Dadaism or Surrealism or things like that.
Yeah. You invited me. I went to, was it Punk Rock and Paintbrushes?
That's right. One of our co-founders of the Sidewalk Project runs Punk Rock and Paintbrushes.
Yeah. It was a really lovely event.
Thank you.
I thought that was great.
Thank you.
You run a program or a nonprofit, Sidewalk Project, which we have featured in a documentary that I'll link below. It's one of my favorites. But more importantly, right now, you had a friend who passed away.
Yeah.
And patient dumping from hospitals, exiting people to homelessness, is a significant crisis that doesn't get enough attention.
And fuels homelessness in a very big way. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, and also grateful for your documentary of us. It's one of my favorites as well, and happily we've worked together quite a few times.
It's I think 169,000 views.
Wow. That's impressive.
Continues to grow.
I love that. I really love that. Yeah, and I would say that the kind of work that you do is so important, like as is art and music, the sort of documenting, especially at a time right now where our history and truth is really on the chopping block. So I think that your work is very important for the revolution as well.
Thank you.
Yeah. But talking about patient dumping, did you want me to tell you the story, or how do you want to?
Yeah, because I know the person. I mean, I believe she's in the documentary a little bit.
She is.
I've met her a couple of times through you when visiting. I mean, I can't say I know her other than being an acquaintance. So yes, please tell us the story.
Let's
because
have
she
story.
was wonderful, and I know that one of the things that and I believe I remember you guys were in touch with her family.
That's right, and are still in touch with her family.
Right, and that's really amazing because she had some disabilities. Mm-hmm. She was out on the streets, had many challenges. Was a lovely person, but because of those challenges and disabilities, that your housed person would probably push her away, and those are the people that you love.
Yeah, we love them very deeply. We are them.
Yeah,
they are us. Yeah,
tell us the story.
Sure. Yeah, and I think this is a really important thing to talk about at this time right now, while Medicaid is going to be affected by the administration. Disability rights are in just a devastating state because of what's happening federally right now. And I believe that patient dumping will increase under this current administration for a variety of different reasons that are very much connected to the healthcare scam that we all live under in the United States, the lack of healthcare. And health insurance very much drives patient dumping as well. The story I'm going to tell you about is Jamie. And Jamie was, I think she was probably in her 40s, or late 30s, but she had the mentality of a 12-year-old. So she was really a child. She was a 12-year-old child that was living in the streets of Skid Row for many, many years, and had failed out of so many different institutions. In fact, she was actually conserved. So she was probate conserved by the court, and her conservator was her mother. And her mother worked very, very hard to support her against all odds. And then we were also behind her. I think that we were working with Jamie for probably about 4 to 5 years. And Jen, who is also featured in your other documentary with the pink hair. I think she had pink hair at the time. Maybe it's blue now.
But the little sister I never wanted.
Yes, I know you had a fun relationship with Jen and like to tease each other. But yeah, she's a very powerful advocate on our team, and she was Jamie's direct person, advocate, the lead in her case, and worked very hard for years to get her into a boarding care so that she would not be on the streets. And I think what people and the regular public don't understand is there's so many different complex reasons why people are unhoused, and there's not one standard fix for everyone.
Right.
As I think that you've probably discussed like in depth in your channel.
Right.
But this particular person had severe mental illness, but also developmental delay, which was part of a syndrome that she was born with. And regular housing places would not take her. Right. We tried to house her many times in just like a standard place where you would take people for care, and she was bounced back to the streets. In fact, some housing providers that we had worked with for years refused to take her back after she was with them. And, in part because she had a lot of behavioral issues. Right. But these behavioral issues were tied to the fact that she was basically 12 years old and being traumatized, being beaten, being raped in the streets. And she was also a sex worker. Right. So you think about this is a woman who has a mind of a 12-year-old and was making her money to survive by doing $5 sex work.
Right.
experiences.
Right.
So she was really, it's a tricky situation too, because in this case, you can't really say that she was necessarily a consensual sex worker. However, sex work was her social safety net.
Survival sex.
Survival sex. There was no other safety net that was really catching her so that she could be cared for every day. She came into our center for years, and
that's the last time I saw her.
At the center? Was
yeah,
it at,
you
at
had
our
a
opening?
parade or something. I couldn't make the opening, but you had a parade, an advocacy parade.
That's right. On overdose awareness
yeah.
day.
And she was there.
She walked with us in the parade.
Yeah.
And a very special person. The arts were part of what we were working with her with, sort of like recovering as much as we can within community. And we have this drop-in center in Skid Row for cis and trans women. And she was probably our most regular guest. There was hardly a day that went by that she wasn't there with us.
Viewing from the outside, you became her family.
It's interesting that you say that, because she would call Jen Sissy and she would call me Mommy. At some point, she started to, categorize us as her street family or her provider family. Yeah. And we felt the same way about her.
Yeah.
In a very deep way.
It was definitely mutual.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. And, a very complex person to work with. So, we have a particular kind of program that is highly low barrier, run by peers, and we practice what we call failure-free harm reduction. So there's only been one individual that we've ever permanently exited from our program. We believe that people stay with us, or we will stay with people until they don't want us to be there anymore, right? But that also means, that we have to learn how to function with a lot of patience, grace, as you mentioned, de-escalation skills, and all of that, because she would throw fits like a child would. We worked very, very hard to keep this woman in care, taking her to hospital over and over again. And what's complicated here is that what hospitals did with her was illegal, but proving that and holding them accountable is another story. We've reported the hospitals for patient dumping.
Because it's illegal. But
It's
they
illegal.
still do it.
And they do it anyway. And what patient dumping is, there's many different ways that it shows up, but particularly with unhoused people who have complex health and mental health needs, who are coming into these high volume hospitals, in places like Los Angeles, our hospitals are just overwhelmed,
right.
And then what we witness is people cycling through hospitals from hospital to street to hospital to street. And in that time, you would imagine that medical care would identify certain things that are going on.
There'd be a social worker that says, hey, let's stop this.
Exactly. Let's bridge you to housing.
Right.
Very few times I've ever in my 7 years of doing this work seen that happen. Right. And when we see that happen, we get very excited and we hold on to those social workers and those medical providers at hospitals, because it is not the norm. Patient dumping, patient neglect, patient abandonment, that is the norm. And then we've got NIMBYs screaming in the street, about how many people are dying in the streets and, trying to change this or that, trying to push back against harm reduction. And I would say you're really looking at the wrong thing. You need to look at these really deep systemic violence that, again, patient dumping is fueled by the healthcare industry. And at a time like now, when this is such a seminal topic, or in everyone's mind after the Luigi event, right? We're talking about healthcare, and people are talking about healthcare who didn't talk about healthcare before.
That was very interesting, because you have a CEO who is gunned down,
right?
And people were supportive of that.
Yeah.
And people that you wouldn't think are supportive of that. And it's just because of the hatred of the healthcare industry and so many people who have had not just bad experiences, but they were abused and had horrible experiences.
And leads to so many deaths, and people's family members feel that deeply. Yeah. And that's across the political divide as well, isn't it? Which is exciting to see some of that new class consciousness evolving under, the current madness. But my concern is that, even under the sort of neoliberal, sort of soft social justice, the way that they couch their form of violence in a lot of care. This is not new. Patient dumping is not new. But now that we have this, unmasking of Western imperialist, white supremacist fascism, where they're actively cutting all of the social safety nets,
It's
then
so
these
scary
things like
what's happening.
patient dumping are going to increase.
Yeah. So what happened to Jamie?
So Jamie, the past year, we worked very, very intensively to get her in care because we could see her decline. Jen was successful in getting her placed in a boarding care, and she started to thrive. She put on a lot of weight. She had sort of like Hello Kitty and unicorn toys and was feeling really good. And then a man tricked her and tricked the supervisors at that facility into releasing her to him, which again, illegal, another system failure. And this man was one of her predators, and he took her to pick up drugs. And I won't go into all of the details because it's grisly.
Yeah.
But he performed sex acts with her after he pulled her out of her program. And then he dumped her in the streets of Skid Row. He didn't take her back to the boarding care. Yeah. He dumped her in the streets of Skid Row, and then that cycle that we were in started to happen again. She started to lose more weight. She started to get sicker, and we watched her decline and beg for help. She would come in and beg us for help. And how do you explain to a 12-year-old mentality, we can't actually meet your needs. Right. We're trying, but the system we're working within is not allowing us to meet your need. We can't get you in housing. No one wants you back. We're not going to say that to her. Right. We can't get you into hospital and keep you there because they keep dumping you, even though it's illegal, both by EMTALA for the patient dumping aspect, and then also because she was probate conserved, that should have been the safety net that protected her, which is really interesting while we're talking about things like forced treatment and more conservatorship and all of that stuff. It doesn't necessarily do anything to help people, right?
Well, you telling this story reminded me of something that I learned from you. The first time I ever looked at and read a bad date list.
Yeah.
And for people that do not know, a bad date list is pretty much what it says, but it's provided to sex workers to let them know that there's these predators out there that are doing unmentionable things. And that was my point, because, some people listen to your story and say, oh, that never happened. No, it happens, and it happens all the time. And it's worse than anything you can imagine, because I read that list and I was like, oh my gosh. And some of the people I knew through you guys, through the streets of walking with you on Skid Row, and I was like, that happened to that woman? Wow.
Yeah, and on a daily basis, the horrors, the gender violence, the horrors that we witness, and we're witnessing it. We're traumatized by witnessing it. Some of these folks are being tortured to death, and it's really cruel. And it's interesting also right now in Los Angeles, while there's a lot of grandstanding from City Attorney Heidi Feldstein Soto, and, she's got this multi-agency task force that's supposedly going to address sex trafficking. That's not what they're doing. Right. They're doing land theft, and they're using Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, the DEA, and violently attacking the Figueroa corridor. Right. And what we know is that increased criminalization does not make sex workers or survivors safer. It doesn't help anyone.
Well, I learned so much from you again, because you asked us to cover one of your protests, and we did, and we made a video and just interviewing people and the stories that they were telling. Yeah, it was very educational.
Yeah. Which, it's interesting because I think this is going to it's not being as focused on as much right now because the new scapegoats are, or the most focused on scapegoats, they're not new, would be trans people and immigrants, right? But that there's intersections for us. We have sex workers who are immigrants and trans, and, we're talking about some horrific things that happens as far as criminalization of survivors and survivors' voices not being heard. And there's this assumption that anti-trafficking groups are helping people. In fact, they're increasing the harm. And Jamie is part of that story. I guess returning to that story.
I was going to say.
Yeah, because I can preach.
Yeah, no.
I can preach in sermon.
We're doing good. We go out there and we come back, and we go out and we come back.
Yeah. So I guess it was about a week and a half ago, I was supposed to meet some of Jamie's medical providers at her tent, and she was going to get some street medicine for some of the underlying issues that she was dealing with. And I walked to the tent to meet her, and I couldn't find her. Usually walking towards her tent, she'd come running towards me with the joy of a child, their arms out, spit flying all over the place, or like it was a thing. And she would be like, Mom, and we would embrace and hold each other. And instead, there was silence in her tent. And so I started to talk to her neighbors to find out where she was. And one of her neighbors said she was just transported to hospital. She had a cardiac event. So I went back and talked to Jen, who was her lead advocate. And Jen and her mother, Jamie's mother, started to call around to see if they could find her. Again, because we were going to do that fight to try and bridge her to care, get her into boarding care somehow, And instead we found that Jamie died that day. She died of a cardiac event. She died of something that was preventable. She died of something that they should have caught in the many, many times that we took her to hospital. She died of something that EMS denied her transport for several weeks prior. We thought she was having a heart attack. And they came and they checked her vitals, and they said, no, she's fine. And they continued on. And we know that, again, women's cardiac events is often ignored and not seen. And some of these EMS providers are not necessarily thinking in terms of gender in those cases. And so in my mind, the whole system was part of killing her. The whole system has blood on their hands because this was preventable. She could be having unicorns and Hello Kitty in a boarding care right now with us and her family going to visit her. Instead, next week we're having her celebration of life.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. And, like our whole community was heartbroken.
Right.
There's as providers can be very challenging to suit up every day and keep going when you know that a large portion of your work will be witnessing the failures of the system and witnessing the people that you care about die of preventable diseases. So what I tell myself and what I tell my team, and this is wisdom that's been passed on to me by others, is that, aside from all of the logistical things that we do, the housing, the healthcare, the Narcan, the food, all of that, our role as advocates is to witness the systemic harm and report that back and use our voices where voices have been suppressed. And also to be that witness for the individual who dies or who suffers so deeply. We witness them in their deepest joy and we witness them in their deepest suffering. So someone saw them, someone believed them, someone sees that they were trying to get help and they just couldn't because of how deeply violent our structure is.
You okay?
Yeah.
Well, I consider you probably one of the strongest women that I have ever met. And I think this is the first time I've seen you cry. And I know because of the work you do, your heart is probably in some state of broken all the time.
All the time.
And you've been through a lot lately.
We've been through a lot lately, right?
Well, yeah, no.
Globally, we've been through a lot lately.
So as homelessness grows, people are getting frustrated and they're pushing for laws that criminalize homelessness, which will only make the problem worse. Invisible People reaches more people, educating them on homelessness than all other homeless sector nonprofits and campaigns combined. But we do it on a limited budget. We don't have the funding they do. We are mostly funded by individual donations. And now that the economy is struggling, individual donations are disappearing, and we need you. I get it. You might not have the money to donate. Many people are struggling right now. Please share our content, share our videos. It really matters. And if you do have some funds and want to help be part of the solution to solve homelessness, please visit invisiblepeople.tv/donate. Our important work stops without you. This is a compliment. Well, I got nothing but compliments for you and your team. You're hard to keep track of because, like, all of a sudden the fires hit and you saw a lot of nonprofits that have nothing to do with fire recovery trying to fundraise, newsjacking, right? Making me mad. And then you look over at the Sidewalk Project and you all going up to Altadena. Right? It's like, what is Soma doing now?
We served 26 neighborhoods during the fire. We saved 80 lives.
Wow.
From overdose.
Wow.
We opened our drop-in center 24/7 as an evacuation shelter, and we are not a shelter.
Right.
Let me tell you, with that many people coming in and out, there was a lot of plumbing issues. Myself and everyone on the board plunged a lot of poopy toilets. Yeah. We had mountains of trash.
The fun part of the
job. At some point, yeah. I mean, we were very much not equipped, but we were ready. And I would say that we are deeply entrenched in the mutual aid community in Los Angeles and, throughout the country. And I would say, when you're talking about these large nonprofits that weaponize crisis as a way to fundraise, and you see all of the different failures that happened in the government around the fires, the mutual aid community stands out.
Well,
stands up because we immediately went into action, and we had people from around the country supporting us. We had
you got crazy amount of donations.
Oh my gosh, we had entire U-Haul trucks coming from around the country and bringing us supplies, and we were distributing them.
That's what I was just
and then continuing to work in Skid Row and MacArthur Park, and I mean, it was incredible. And during that time, we also got connected to some large humanitarian organizations that supported us. Project Hope, SAMU First Response, CORE reached out and helped us. So we really did get some supports from some of those larger nonprofits.
I wanted to say there, and it wasn't just. There's wonderful nonprofits that stepped up to help people in the fire. Many.
Yeah.
There's just a couple that I saw, like, you're not even doing anything for the people in the fire. Why? There was very small percentage, right?
Yeah.
Most nonprofits, it's LA. This is our hood.
Yeah.
Let's rise up and start helping people.
Yeah.
Most did that.
Yeah. Which, and I think that there's been some wonderful research into what happens in disasters, and there can be this narrative, which we saw here in Los Angeles, and we saw in Louisiana, and we've seen in other places where where there's massive disasters. The sort of state violence arm comes in to protect against looting, and that's not necessarily really where the focus of people are. When crisis happens, people do rise up and support each other, and that's evidenced over and over again. We saw that in COVID. We see that in so many places. But then at the same time, we've got this very sinister thing that's happening where the wildfires can be used as a way to push forward gentrification efforts that were already happening in Los Angeles ahead of the Olympics. So we're looking at the potential for massive land theft through the violence, and the violence is also, impacted by this federal stuff. We've got ICE in our streets, we have to have community self-defense groups stand up to protect our people.
It's crazy times.
Yeah. And I think it's really important to look at it from that lens around land theft and displacement, especially of BIPOC people, especially of unhoused people, of migrants, of people that you see in the streets.
Yeah. There's a very strong harm reduction community here, and you're one of them. I love you guys the most, so I just want to say, although we haven't hung out in a while, I feel connected to you. So I don't want to diss all the others because there's other people doing good harm reduction.
There's some incredible harm reductionists in Los Angeles.
Yeah. So tell me what's going on in that space.
I'll brag about harm reduction for a minute. While overdoses continue to rise, Los Angeles County harm reduction syringe programs are responsible for saving 10,000 lives from overdose just last year. That's in 1 year.
Wow.
So we have a powerful group of on-the-ground people who are also all connected and advocate together. And we've done so much work to build our coalition over the past few years. And I would say that every single one of our syringe programs really stands out in a very big way. I'm really excited to see that one of our partners, Blue Hollywood Street Sanctuary, I know that you're going to interview Pastor Blue.
He's going to be sitting right where you are.
Absolutely. And he's one of our partners and is also
your recommendation.
He's amazing. His team is amazing. And they are our secondary program, so they get their protections as a syringe program through working with us as a sub-grantee secondary program. And we're really excited to see them empowered and go off on their own more and more. And, if people want to fund them, please fund them. Yeah. They are doing the good work. They are saving lives 24/7. Their pop-up is 24/7 on the streets of Skid Row, and it rose out of the streets of Skid Row. It is Skid Row taking care of that. Yeah, so beautiful. And then there's so many others, just absolute harm reduction heroes in Los Angeles County that I feel honored to be connected to.
So what is Sidewalk Project? Where's your number one? Where's your main focus areas? I shouldn't say what's your number one.
So we are headquartered in Skid Row, and we primarily serve Skid Row and MacArthur Park. We do have a couple chapters in other places. There's one in Los Baños, and there's one in Phoenix. And as I said, we step up. If we see a need, we're going to fight for our city. Yeah. We're going to fight for our county, for our community. So we did serve 26 neighborhoods, with a variety of different services over just in the month of January. But traditionally, we're focused on Skid Row and MacArthur Park. And I think it's important to point out what's different about us. We are women-founded, women-led, and women-focused. So we do gender-specific harm reduction with an understanding that women who use drugs have a completely different set of vulnerabilities. You don't have a door to shut. And, the vulnerabilities to things like sexual assault is really extreme. So, it's very important for us. And we have a little safe haven, drop-in center in Skid Row.
You have a great space. One of the things that I look back on that broke my heart at the time, but I'm glad, because we were going to split a space. And even though I wanted to, it wasn't ready for us. And I said, sorry, Soma, I can't. And I think that was good for both of us. Because you went on and found your own space, and then you found an even better space. Yeah. And so proud of you. Awesome.
Thank you. But it's also fun to bring up that little point in our history. Yeah. We were almost co-located for a period of time.
Right. Yeah. It just wasn't, when I was looking at it, it was like, oh, we got one employee, I can't, and we could have done some cool training people in the creative arts.
100%.
You know, I fully believe we could have done it. Just wasn't the right time for invisible people. And it was the right time for you to start getting your own space.
Absolutely. And happily, you know, we have moved into that space of training people in creative arts. We actually got a grant from LA County a year ago specifically for violence interruption work. And that violence interruption work is fueled by workforce development, arts and music opportunity, outreach, and training people so that they can have new opportunities. So we've been paying people to paint murals, and we're getting ready to pay people to make videos and
very cool.
all of that. And, you know, I hope that we can find a way to connect on some of those things, because I very much believe in the power of film as a really, really important aspect to social justice work.
It's extremely important. So in the little bit of time left, how'd you get into doing this? Tell me about Soma Snakeoil.
Well, I am a lived experience person. I am a sex worker. I'm a former drug user, formerly unhoused. I was unhoused with my kid when I was younger, moving in and out of hotel rooms. There's a lot of mental illness in my family, and I've had experience with police harassment and arrest and jailing and intimate partner violence and sexual assault, and being investigated by Department of Children's Services for being a sex worker. They tried to take my kid away. So, you know, I come from a very similar background to the people that we serve, and so it's a heart passion.
Right. And it's funny. It's not funny. It's actually sad. Every time I feature you, harm reduction, sex work, I lose donors and I lose subscribers.
I'm sorry.
No.
Thanks for you're still doing it.
I'm going to still do it. I mean, I get, called names, everything else. And you mentioned, Child Protective Services because you were a sex worker. And some people would think, oh, you need to remove. No, you should never remove the child unless there's abuse, right? And you providing for your child is not abuse, right? And sex work gave you independence so that you could take care of yourself and your child.
I mean, sex work gave us a roof over our head, and sex work paid for many things, including food. And as I've mentioned before, I was able to keep my kid in good schools because of sex work at some point. So, yeah, it's interesting because I was hopeful because there has been a move to keep families together, and I know that there has been some institutional change and perspective around that. But we have a long history of breaking apart families from, Native American families and forcing people into boarding schools and all of that. This is a very long-term violence that we've, created intergenerational trauma. That, we see the downstream impacts in our streets today. Like, how many of our people are so traumatized simply from being ripped away from their families, when we could bring in social workers and support families to keep them together, make sure that they have food, make sure that, there's education and all of these things happening rather than ripping apart lives.
I was an outreach case manager, family case manager here for 4 years. And I learned really quickly that just because a family is homeless, you do not separate the kids. So I wanted to make that distinction. Just because your occupation is sex work, you do not separate the family.
100%.
I will die on that hill, right? Because once the families, whether they're in a hotel, I mean, as a family case manager, if there was a family in a tent, we would work extra hard to at least get them in a hotel. Right? And they should not be separated. There's more trauma separating the kids. I mean, homelessness is horrible, but there's more trauma separating the kids from their parents than, if you really are concerned about it, get that family into housing.
That part. and give them all of the supports so that they can thrive, not just survive, right?
Yeah, exactly.
100%. And, we're going to see more families in the streets. We're going to see more need for sex work as a social safety net, as our social safety nets are being ripped away from us right now. So we really need to get this right.
I visited hotels in New Jersey, and all of the weekly rate hotels, all of them were the county's homeless shelter. They're just housing them in, and they were really horrible places. And what was interesting is that each room was $1,800, and some of the families, because they had so many kids, would have 2 rooms. That's enough for an apartment. Go rent an apartment, but the system is so broken. So, is there anything you'd like to add? And if people want to support the Sidewalk Project or learn more, one thing is, one of the reasons I didn't do too much of a deep dive is people can watch the documentary. How do people get a hold of you? And anything you'd like to add?
Well, I'd say I hope that you don't lose any funders or support this time. So that's one of my calls to action. Do not, penalize invisible people for the work that the Sidewalk Project is doing. Second, I would say, patient dumping is happening throughout the nation, every community. If there are advocates and legal people who want to put their eyes on this, please look at this as part of the equation. We're trying to end homelessness. We're not going to end homelessness with some of these practices happening. So please look at patient dumping as a very serious thing. Last, we are here and we do education and are happy to consult around things like gender-based violence and sex worker issue and harm reduction, so you can reach out to us. If you want to learn more about the Sidewalk Project, we encourage you to go to our website or to our Instagram page. Our website is thesidewalkproject.org, and our Instagram you can find through thesidewalkproject.org.
There you go. Well, thank you for spending time.
Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you.